Hello everyone and welcome to Escape to Nature. We're coming to you live from the Kariega Game Reserve in the Eastern Cape. And what a wonderful morning it has been. It was very chilly starting out earlier, but the sun's gotten up and it's warming up nicely. We had some small predator action, a little bit earlier, some jackals that were harassing a little baby wildebeest, and that also was doing a little bit of hunting in the grass. He seems to have now disappeared, and it seems like all the usual characters are out and about. The zebra and the wildebeest who just ran out in front of them, and lots of others. And my name is Ralph Kirsten, in case you didn't know. And we are excited to see what the bush will bring us once again. And as always, please don't forget that this is an interactive experience, so we'd love for you to send through your questions and your comments. Let us know what you'd like to know, or what you'd like to see, or what you'd like to for us to concentrate on. Whatever it might be, jump on board with us as we escape to nature. And while we are escaping to nature, it's wonderful to see these lovely animals out here on the plain. And as I said, it's very sunny, it's warming up, there's not too many clouds around, but I wonder what it's like with the weather across all the different locations. And I was chatting a little bit earlier about the ostriches on the sunrise safari, and because the last time that I was here on Kariega, a couple of months ago, there was a lot of activity, breeding behavior from these particular ostriches, and the males were fighting with each other. They were calling consistently every day. There was a lot of displaying towards between the males, as well as from males to females, and there was a lot of mating as well. Subsequently, Nick, who was here after me, he told me that there was a lot of nesting going on, and he also saw some eggs, and he did see some chicks. But since then, it seems like they've all disappeared. And I don't know if that they've all been taken out by predators, or if they've died as a result of the sort of humid, wet weather that we get here, and then maybe eaten by predators. Who knows? I still have a very strong feeling that it's a lot to do with the weather that we get here in this particular part of the Eastern Cape. Very wet overnight, very humid, but it's a cold, wet and humidity. So I think those chicks stay wet for a very long time, and that then really increases the mortality rate. That's why they occur in much more arid regions, and they don't do particularly well wherever it is humid or wet for extended periods. And if you know the Eastern Cape, well, you can pretty much bet every night is humid, unless you have a very strong west wind coming through that goes through into the evenings, which isn't all the time. So the predominant weather and climate over especially the evening and cold periods is humid as well. So I think they struggle to get through that. Anyway, let's hope that we do see one or two that survive. Otherwise, we're just going to be sitting with the same amount of ostriches that will be fighting it out once more to try and get some offspring coming through. I'll just have to wait and see. This one doing a bit of feather maintenance. Female. And there's my friend Stompy. I was wondering where he was. Tina, thanks for jumping on board with us and starting off the show with Kariega. It is wonderful to start here, as being very close to my hometown of Port Alfred, and lovely to catch up with my friend there with the little flashy tail, Stompy, the zebra with half a tail. Let's go in and see if we can get a little bit closer to him. See if I can center him a little bit better. He is hiding behind that ostrich and the blesbok. 3 in a row. His tail does look rather amusing. Still trying to keep the flies away. Looks like he's got a small little tuft of hair there on the end, and he's got to work a lot harder to keep away the pests than if he had a lovely extravagant tail that they normally have. Now that it's been bitten off, he's got to just make do with what he has. But he seems to be doing all right, because he seems to be quite a successful stallion. He's got himself a nice harem. So it doesn't seem like his tail has led him to drop in the standings in his local community. It is starting to warm up quite nicely now, so we might be lucky in that we get to see some of the animals coming down for a mud wallow or a drink. Darcy Miller, thanks for the warm welcome, and lovely to hear that you're on board again with us. And yeah, starting with ostriches, well, they've really kept me entertained here at Kariega, so it's nice to continue on in that vein. And this is a very good looking female as well. She's just making sure that all her feathers are primed. A little bit wet last night. The grass was full of dew from that humidity that I speak of. So she probably just, as it's drying out, and her feathers drying out as well after that humid night, she's probably just making sure with all her feathers. And as it does heat up, that normally brings with it the flies and the pests, and then you start to see more of the tail swishing from all the animals and the ear flicking as they do start to become a pain. You can hear very clearly in the background is a red-fronted tinkerbird calling continuously. If you listen carefully, you may hear it. Interspersed with our character that's in the front there, the Hardy-Dar. That tail of Stompy's really looks like it's got a mind of its own. Those little tinkerbirds, for such a small little bird, make a very loud call, and very continuous as well. Interspersed as well, as I said, with Hardy-Dars, but also the somber green bull. Quite a lot of animals moving through here. Blesbok, zebra, ostriches. There were some wildebeest, but those seem to have moved off. And we are down here next to the Scotia Dam. So they call this the Scotia Clearings. And that Hardy-Dar walking in the front will also be probing. It's good for them to do it in the early mornings like this, because the soil is still wet and probably nice and soft. And as it heats up, it becomes like concrete. So difficult for them to probe then in just below the surface of the soil. So much better for them now. Hi Dee, it is very diverse here indeed, isn't it? We have a whole array of different animals, and as you've just said that, there comes another animal into frame, one of our friendly giraffes there in the background. Quite far away, but maybe the journey of giraffe, as they have often done, come marching through here towards Scotia Dam and have a drink, and they do seem to prefer to also drink in the mud wallow. Why, I'm not sure, because the water is I would assume, much tastier down in Scotia Dam, but maybe it's because it's down in a bit of a depression, and so as we know, giraffe are very nervous around waterholes with good reason, and that's when they're most vulnerable, because they've got to lean down with their necks not being long enough to reach the ground without doing the splits or crouching down. So it seems like they prefer going to the mud wallow because it's not in a depression and they can still see very clearly in the surrounding areas. So that is what I think the reason is. They prefer drinking out of the wallow because I'm pretty sure that it will be tasting a lot like mud, because it is just a thin layer of water on top of the mud and very often mixed in with it as well, after the likes of warthog and buffalo and rhino have been wallowing in it. I can't imagine it tastes very nice. But yeah, safety over taste, I would say, from the giraffe's perspective. There we can hear Knysna Turako calling up in the thickets.
Wild Earth family, we need you to become a Wild Earth explorer so we can continue bringing the magic of nature to people all over the world who can't afford to pay. Everyone deserves the right to enjoy nature. Please help us make a difference by paying a small monthly amount. Join us in giving back to our planet by supporting this worthy cause. Let's forge a special connection between people and nature, inspiring conservation efforts worldwide.
These two female ostriches are doing different chores at the same time. One was feeding, and the other one just doing a little bit of feather maintenance. One at the back looks like it's got an itchy head. Back to feeding. So interesting to note with ostriches, you can see very clearly that they only have one exit, and it's called the cloaca. And so you see the uric acid, the liquid, flow white, and then generally after that you will see a little bit more solid substances, and that's the solids. So they eject both out of the cloaca, and then that's what you'll be seeing whenever they defecate. Is this female in front now going to partake in a dust bath, or is she just going to have a relaxed feed? Looks like the latter. Oh, she started a trend. It's like having your breakfast on the couch. But you'll see if they do dust bathe, they use their neck to sort of scoop the dust and bring it back towards themselves. I thought the one at the rear was about to do that. But I think they're in quite a grassy area, so I'm not sure if there's any dust in that particular spot. What I can tell you is that with them lying there right now, they are going to be having ticks crawling all over them. Nick, who was here before me, I don't think he realized the amount of ticks that there are here. And we're in an open vehicle where we sit here and film from, so it gets rather hot. But I've worked on this game reserve for many years, mainly training the trails rangers. So I've walked this property flat, and I know the amount of ticks that we used to get on us from just walking through here was excessive. Sometimes we used to count in excess of 100 tick bites on any given day, and it's the little pepper ticks, so you don't really feel them when they onto you. And sometimes you walk through a nest and you can have 50 on you at once. And yeah, unless you look for them, you mainly don't see or feel them until they've latched on and they've already injected the anticoagulant, which most of us are allergic to, and then it becomes extremely itchy. And that's the point that you realize that you've got ticks on you. And sometimes you scratch those little ticks off before you even see them. So it just becomes a little bit of a welt, but it is highly, highly irritable and itchy. Sometimes waking up at 3 in the morning to scratch them. And the more you scratch them, the itchier it becomes. Now, Nick didn't realize this, and one very hot day, he decided to climb underneath the bakkie that we use or pick up and to get some shade and lie down on the grass. And he said it wasn't half an hour and he literally started feeling things crawling all over him. So at least he got to feel it, but by which time he was full of ticks. Needless to say, that was the first and last time that he lay under the vehicle to get some shade. I think he rather stick sweating on the back rather than go underneath and get full of ticks. But yeah, with my experience, I would have been able to tell him that that was not a good idea, because sometimes we used to walk through particular patches and get full of ticks. But generally anywhere especially on this eastern side, for some reason, there is a lot of ticks. So these ostriches right now, I can tell you, are crawling with ticks. They don't seem to mind one bit. But all animals, especially out here in the bush, in general, will always be traveling with pests of some kind, most notably ticks, sometimes going into the hundreds of thousands on one animal. So a giraffe there in the background, if we had to see it a bit closer, we would be able to count many, many, many ticks, especially under the soft underbelly, under the front legs, under the back legs especially, and towards the very sort of soft parts. You notice that on the big males, their testicles get full of ticks. It must be excruciating. And every now and then you do see them trying to scratch in those particular areas. It must be extremely painful. And irritating and itchy. But yeah, maybe because we don't really live with it. We don't experience it the same way they do. Maybe they just get on with it and it doesn't become actually that much of an irritation. And they do have the help of the likes of the red-billed oxpeckers, who do add some relief, but as we know, they don't generally pull off all the ticks. Far from it. They actually make a small dent, but generally the ticks will be more than the oxpeckers can eat. In fact, there have been some studies to show that, yes, the oxpeckers do eat and feed on the ticks, but they don't do much in the way of reducing the actual amount of ticks on them. So anyway, let's just carry on seeing what else is going to show itself here next to the Scotia Dam. But that's enough from me to start. I think it's time to head to Trish.
Operating the dams. Here we're at Okokoyo, and if you didn't know, it's me, Trishala. Lovely to be with you as always, and thank you for always sending through some awesome questions and comments. I love that, and I hope that you'll continue to do that. But here we have a beautiful elephant bull coming down to drink. This is so exciting. Elephants, and I've always said that it's so hard for me to pick a favorite animal, but elephants are really up there. Elephants and obviously chameleons. We've got some springbok in the front as well. I know you've been having some wonderful discussions with Ralph there in Karika, and I know that Ralph really loves this waterhole too. And I'm sure he would love to see some elephants on that end as well. Now this bull is really taking his time. Can you actually see the slight path that's been made there? So you can see that the majority of the sand and the rocks, really, it's not very sandy. It's very large grained sand at best. And it's quite mineral rich. That's why there's this very pale color. But you can see where a lot of the animals have made a path down to this waterhole. And that's the exact same path that this bull is taking. He's really taking his time. That's something I love about elephants, is that they hardly ever seem to be in a rush. They seem to have really accepted their size, their stature, and appear to be very patient. Maybe that's just a product of the fact that they're the largest land animal, and so they have to take their time, but it seems very purposeful. Now, usually around now, if he hasn't had a drink already in the day, he would be quite happy and give that little jog almost. The happy elephant or elephant is really nonsense, but it feels like it sometimes. But I think he might have already had a drink, or perhaps he's not really desperate for another drink, so he's taking his time coming down here. He doesn't have this kind of frantic jig. The happy frantic jig, of course. Don't often associate frantic with happy, but I think that's my mistake. Because elephants, when they jig down to the waterhole, do have a bit of a frantic step. Anyway, he's moving just out of our view now. Let me try and move us. I was hoping that he would turn. So usually when they come down to drink here, look, he's still using that path. They will usually turn and come all the way to the left of the waterhole. And I've seen it a couple times with the elephants here. So elephants will try really hard to get to a spot where the water is best. And they will know the water is best by testing it and tasting it. But then after that initial kind of experimentation with the water, they will then, just from memory, know to go straight to the side where the water is clean and tasty. Oh, yes. Hello, boy. Hi, Janet. You'd like to know if all animals are usually spooked by elephants at the water holes? Sometimes. I mean, it's hard to say all animals. Most animals will, particularly. I mean, there's so much to talk about here. So he's gone down, had a drink now. Usually, I think he'll move a little bit more to the left before he settles in, but we'll see. But Janet, it depends on a couple of things. So for animals that have felt quite relaxed the entire day or the last couple of days and have had a relaxing experience at the waterhole and haven't had any threats, so they're not in a stressed state, you might find that they won't really be bothered by the elephant. Whereas other large animals, so say a rhino, which usually are not very bothered by elephants, even buffalo, sometimes are not very bothered by elephants at all. But if they have been in some sort of stressful situation, a little bit on a bit more of a high alert, then you might find that they too will respond by reacting to the elephant's presence and moving away. Generally speaking, smaller animals, and I don't mean tiny, tiny animals, I mean antelope-sized animals, so excluding the large animals like the buffalo, the rhino, and other elephants, those small animals tend to be a little bit more reactive to the presence of an elephant. And it's really important that they are. An elephant is not a critical threat to them. The elephants are herbivores, they are herbivores, they are not in direct competition. There's no reason for them to fight, really. But if an animal had to think about all those reasons every time it was approached by another animal, it would likely die. If it allowed this elephant to come close to it because it said to itself, or, it doesn't say to itself, but instinctually a response was learned that elephants don't harm me, so I don't have to worry. If that response became instinctual through evolutionary time for an animal, for example, this wildebeest that's coming along now, then when an elephant is a little angry, a little bit irritated, and does stampede in the direction of this wildebeest, for example, then it's going to die. And that's just a matter of size. So it's really important for those smaller mammals to maintain their personal space. I call it personal space, but it's not personal space like you and I think, but that comfortability buffer. And it's important that they maintain that for any animal. Because it's better that they be safe than sorry. So you can see that these wildebeest are not really reacting to the elephant's presence, but they have probably seen him for a while and moved to that side of this waterhole. Again, I'm just making an assumption. That could have been the nearest spot to them. But if you noticed, the elephant bull did turn and have a look at them. Elephants, I always say that they get a bee in their bonnet sometimes, and they can be unpredictable. They may be irritable. And I spoke earlier about how an animal's experience through the day, or maybe even through its life, through the last few days, will affect how it behaves today. And with elephants, we know that they have excellent memories. They're able to remember water sources during a drought that they may have followed their matriarch to when they were very young. But they remember these things because it's important to their survival. And so that also means that they can remember when they have been irritated, injured, or any other kind of negative action was caused against them. They can remember those things too. And I feel like they may have a harder time letting go of certain kinds of irritation. And oftentimes, they will misplace and displace their aggression. But all seems to be very peaceful today. Oh, hi, Jesse. Thank you so much for escaping into nature with us today. You have an excellent question, and it's always great to get down to the basics when we see a nice, big, iconic animal. And you would like to know, how heavy is a fully grown elephant? Well, elephant bulls, those are the males, are much heavier than the cows, which are the females. So bulls can be up to about 6,500 kgs. That's huge, don't you think? Some elephant bulls even more than that. But on average, it's going to be for a fully grown male about 6 tons, 6.5 tons. But there have been records of much heavier bulls too. But those are kind of exceptions. They are not the rule. So for a big elephant bull, we're looking at about 6,000 kgs. And some. For a cow, though, she'll be significantly smaller. She'll be about 4,000 kgs. 3.5 to 4,000 kgs. So she's a lot smaller, even though if we had to see her on her own, she'd be very, very, very large. Bulls will continue to grow throughout their lives, and so they'll just get taller and wider and heavier as they grow. But remember, elephants also grow slowly. They're a big animal that invests a lot of time in taking care of their young. They have a long gestation period. So all these things tell us that they will grow slowly. It takes a long time for them to mature. Now with females, they too, in a way, will continuously grow through their lives, but they're not going to get significantly larger or wider like a bull will as he grows. And that's because their growth is limited by things like carrying young and giving birth, maintaining their production of milk, taking care of young, all those kinds of things. And also remember that the females in a herd, they're not alone, they're in a herd. So that can also affect their growth. And in addition, I mean, there's always so many things that affect one thing, and now we're talking about size and maturity. Remember that we've spoken about this before as well, sexual selection. The bigger a male is, the larger his tusks, the taller he is. Body size plays a role in sexual selection. And usually, that is on the males. It is on the males to entice and woo the females. And so often we see selection for mates being played out mostly on the males. They need to get fancier, perhaps more colorful, like in the case with birds, or in the case of elephants and many, in fact, most other mammals. I say most because there are some notable exceptions, like hyenas. Size is a big deal for the males. Bigger, stronger, more horn. I was going to say, never mind, I'm not going to say that. The larger the horns are. All those things, and of course, any other thing like coloration, stripes, being able to fight, all those things play a role. And of course, being able to fight and defend females or their territories is a little easier if you've got bigger horns and you have a bigger body. So many things at play. Hi, Cheryl. I didn't catch all of your questions. You did say something about the background, but I'm sure I'll get it again. Ah, Cheryl, I'm so glad that you brought that up. So Cheryl wants to know how far away are those line of trees in the background. So when I first started looking at the Okokoyo Cam, I thought it was quite far. And the animals that I would see there, when they looked large, I would think to myself, my goodness, that must be some elephants coming down because it looks so far, and those animals seem large when you see them at that tree line. But then it turns out to be some springbok or some impala or some gemsbok most of the time. Because it's not actually that far away. Now I couldn't tell you the distance exactly, but it's not as far away as it looks. And that's because of our perception. It's open and it's flat, and on top of that, there's very little, a lot of the light is being reflected off. So there's very little to give us depth perception. There's very few shadows, things like that, and those are all cues our eyes will use in order to perceive depth and distance, which our brains are very good at, by the way. So there's none of that to give us cues. Now we have another elephant coming down. And so we also can't judge how tall those trees are. But I can tell you that they're not huge, because I've seen giraffes and they are about the height of those trees. So those trees are probably not more than, say, 6 meters. Now, as we were chatting about those trees there and the tree line, this bull that we were watching drink stopped. And he almost appeared to stop dead still. Ooh, we might see an interaction here, going back to Janet's question earlier about animals at the waterhole. This wildebeest minding his own business, but he did get a little bit of a flick of this elephant's trunk. Now that sometimes will happen, just as I was saying before, they get a little bit irritated and they take it out on a different animal. So here, I don't think it's irritation, or maybe a little bit of irritation, but this elephant in front of us, the bull that we were watching at first, he stopped and he listened. He waited. Something was happening. He was communicating with somebody, or somebody was communicating with him. And that's when we saw the other elephant approach. And that's when this bull closest to us started to move in that direction, and the unfortunate wildebeest was in the way. And it's unlikely that this elephant was very upset with the other bull coming down. Elephants don't have territories. But they do have, especially large and older elephant bulls, do have a lot of testosterone. And that can sometimes prompt them to react, not always aggressively, but their bandwidth, that space between seeing something and reacting, can become a little bit shorter when there's a lot of testosterone coursing through its body. So it probably saw this elephant come through and see the one that's coming through. His head is slightly raised. Can you see that? He's not fully relaxed. Again, it doesn't immediately mean that they're going to fight, but there's some tension. It's also very unlikely that these are two bulls that are completely unfamiliar with each other. They can communicate over large distances, and they certainly did communicate at one point when we were watching this bull closest to us. Let's see what happens. But you can kind of feel a bit of tension. Head is raised, and that approaching the bull that was coming down. The bull that we saw first is approaching. They will have to be familiar with each other. It is so unlikely that they're not. And sometimes it's just all part of the machismo display. Hey, I'm bigger than you. Show me some respect. That kind of thing. And certainly... Oh, this wildebeest. Sorry, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, Vildi. So our first bull, which is now the one on the left, obviously said something, displayed in some way, showed some body language, postured in the way that suggested to the other elephant that's walking towards us now, suggested to him, please go around me. Maybe in not as polite phrasing, but something along those lines was definitely said. I feel like they may still be communicating. Whenever you see elephants very still, it often means that they're listening to something infrasonically. Because they have to use, or that listening ability is aided by their body. They can pick up the vibrations through their body, and that's because of the way that sound moves through land. And you know it, you feel it when you are at a rock concert, or you have a very bassy subwoofer in your car. I don't know. Whatever it is, whatever your way of feeling bass is, you're feeling sound waves. And elephants do the same. And they feel them, or they can feel them better when they're still, because they're creating less disruption. It could be that one of these bulls are in must as well, which is, I mean, I would say it's this one there on the right that we're leaving. But it's something I really can't tell without being there in person and seeing what, how he's dripping, where he's dripping from, and also being able to smell him. And just be able to pick up the general, for lack of a better term, vibe. Just trying to see if we can catch up with our other elephant. Ah, there we go. So his tail is kind of swinging, but there's a little bit of a stiffness. Can you see that? So he's probably paying a little bit of attention. to the other bull while he's drinking. Oh, look at this. Magnificent. This bull's got some pretty thick tusks. They're short, but they're quite thick. Height-wise, he does seem a little bit shorter than the other bull. Although I must say the distance between his eyes and his tusks are quite significant. Maybe the same or slightly less than the other bull. But it really felt like the other bull was showing some kind of dominance, reacting to this bull as opposed to both of them reacting to each other. Sometimes it also takes a bit of time. The bulls will get used to each other or used to the fact that, oh, there's somebody else in my space now, and then everything is fine. Sometimes it just is a matter of showing off that, hey, I'm an elephant bull. And this is what I do as an elephant bull. But now it's okay because I showed you I'm an elephant bull. You showed me you're an elephant bull. We're both big and strong, and now we can drink some water together. No worries. Absolutely stunning way to start us off here at Okokoyo. Anyway, I'm going to stick around and watch these bulls, and I'm going to send you over to Andrew, who'd like to say good morning.
Hello, good day everybody. Welcome to the Eastern Cape Bushveld, and we have started off with the Three Amigos here on Amakhala Game Reserve, which is a very good start to the day, I do believe. So I think we're going to stick around here for some time and watch them. And of course, they are full-bellied. They had an eland the other day. So hello again, my name is Andrew. I'm Paul, still behind the camera. We're doing very well. We hope you are too, and we hope you learn lots of new things with us today. Awesome stuff. Let's have a look at these beautiful cheetahs. Look at them, they are totally flat, sort of on the side of the road there, on the side of the path. Now, for some of you, maybe you didn't know this, but yeah, these three cheetahs, they killed almost a full-grown female eland. Wasn't yesterday, day before yesterday. Well, yeah, it was a day before yesterday, and because of that, I mean, they're going to be extremely full. They're going to be very, very good condition at the moment. And there's no reason really to move around too much. So they just found themselves a nice little peaceful spot of shade, and they're going to stick it out there in that shade over there. But it's lovely. It's nice to see these cheetahs in such great condition. Now again, I'll mention that it's very impressive what they have been able to do in terms of their kills. Think about it. It's almost a full-grown female eland is a big animal. And on a normal day for a solitary cheetah or even a coalition of two cheetah, that's pushing the luck a little bit. But these three male cheetahs working very well together, they understand each other very well, and because of that they have managed to pull down a female eland. Very impressive. We already know that they've killed a good few kudu, some of them being big bulls, and then a lot of smaller things as well. This is a great little place for them because it seems that they have learned to use the boundary to hunt, which is normal for predators. Some of the reserves that I've worked at before, again, also using boundaries as nets and so on. So they figure out things and they figure out their environment very well and quickly. And they learn how to use that environment in their advantage. So we did take a drive past where that eland was killed, and it's pretty much just skin, bones and horns left now. And the pied crows were very active there, and they're stripping all that sinew and meat in between all those gaps that the cheetahs left behind. But I would have expected these cheetahs to maybe have been there again this morning, because often they'll still lick the matter that's between the bones and so on with their tongues. And some of you will have house cats and domestic cats at home, and you'll be familiar with how rough their tongues are. So you can only imagine how rough a cheetah's tongue must be, being much bigger than a domestic cat. And those tongues are very useful because they're able to scrape all of that meat and matter and sinew between all those areas that they can't necessarily just bite it off with their teeth. So that's a good function of a rough tongue. And also just to keep their coats nice and clean, that they will groom themselves, groom each other, and remain clean. Now I must tell you a funny story. On our way to find these cheetah, we drove over some of their fresh scat. And if there are any guides watching, you will be familiar that driving over predator scat is terrible. The smell really does kick off and intensify, and it's lingering all around us right now. So somewhere on our tire is fresh cheetah scat. And I think maybe this afternoon when we're having a little bit of lunch, I think it's going to be in our best interest just to try and wash that off. Now, driving over their fresh scat also does create a challenge for us, because if we don't wash it off, then the other animals are going to smell it off of us. Hello, Paul. Nice to hear from you, Paul. Two different independent coalitions would they fight? Cheetahs are not really designed like that. If you look at lion and leopard, they're extremely territorial, and they will engage in some real fights. You don't often see this with cheetah, because cheetahs, they prefer not to damage themselves or injure themselves, because they're delicate enough as it is. And I know they are strong animals and they look very powerful. But at the end of the day, a cheetah, out of all the cats, are extremely delicate. And they are prone to injury very easily. And when injuries do occur, it's a problem for them, because then they're not going to be able to be as active or as successful as what they were, depending on the type of injury. And it can lead to their downfall as well. Many cheetahs in Africa die from injuries. It's crazy, because some of the prey that they go for are going to fight. Now, Ivory, who used to be a previous male on Amakhala, he got into a hunt with a warthog, which is also impressive for a cheetah. Usually they prefer to leave them alone, especially the big warthogs, not so much the smaller ones. And he got an injury from that hunt. And later on, it did lead to his downfall, which is quite sad. But it's normal in nature. That's the truth. Now, as you can see the cheetahs laying flat over there, you can actually see how almost level to the ground they are. And it's just a good illustration of actually how slender they are. And as soon as they lay flat, even though that stomach is super full, you could easily not see this. So if they were laying in the grass or something, or if they were laying somewhere in the bush, I mean, it's so easy to drive past cheetah, even with a full belly.
Flora lovers, don't miss Wild Earth's botanical pinnacle of the year. Join our resident botanists, Steve and Trishala, for the Flora Fest. 3 afternoon drives from the 13th till the 15th of April, celebrating Plant Appreciation Day and Day of the Mushroom. Wild Earth, it's in your nature.
It's out of balance. And the reason for that is, when they're chasing prey, often enough their competitors, other predators and scavengers, they see the chase, they know the commotion, what's going on. And cheetah expelling lots of energy, you find that when they do catch their prey eventually, that they can't consume right away. They have to try and drag it under a bush or something, hide it away, and then sit next to the carcass and then pant and allow the body to cool down before the animal is actually able to proceed to consume the animal that they've hunted. And because of that, often enough, the predators and scavengers just walk in and take. So they do lose a lot of their kills, unfortunately. Now, there's lots and lots of flies busy buzzing about here. You probably can't hear it, but I can hear a lot of them are actually landing on the roof of the vehicle. I think they're attracted to our terrible smell at the moment. And it's not us. We did drive over some scat. And I think, as we drive on and we do see some general animals, they may just feel nervous by us because they can smell that scat. Okay, we're going to continue watching these cheetahs, see what they get up to, if anything. In the meantime, let's go to Trish and see what's happening on the dam cams.
Oh, those cheetahs looked so lovely, and towards the end that they picked up their heads as well. What a fantastic escape to nature so far. Now this is the second bull that came down. He got himself into the water just a little bit. You can see he's very fashionable, has some boots on. And our original bull, the first one that came down, is sort of, you can just see him at the edge there, walking off. Our springboks are also getting into the water a little bit. They do that quite a lot here at Okokoyo. A good way to cool down. Oh, bit of a fight there as well. And this Ellie is watching them, but you can see that they're not reacting too strongly to him. And that's another thing to think about, is that once animals are at a waterhole for a little bit and they get comfortable with each other's presence, and it's no longer a surprise that there's a elephant bull or some springbok at the waterhole, then things seem to be a little bit calmer. But like you see here, as soon as he starts to approach, they will begin to move off. Size really does matter out in the wild. The bigger you are, the more space you take up, and you can really throw around that weight. He's flicking some water onto him, just a little bit, not a full bathing session. They will sometimes flick water at other animals if they're too close to them as well. There was a time it flicked water at my vehicle once. And I got some onto my face. But it was a much younger bull. Younger animals tend to be, a lot like humans. Younger animals are still exploring and still trying to figure out what works best. Where can my energy best be spent? And so with younger animals, you might see, younger mammals that is, you'll see a lot of behaviors that appear to be wasteful. Because they're still trying to figure out the path to being most energy efficient while still getting their needs filled. And so the young elephants, especially young elephant bulls, they can be quite boisterous and will start flicking water all over the place. And in that instance, the water in my direction was one of those cases. Really meaningless. I wasn't even that close. You might even see interesting hunting strategies. I mean, you definitely see it with leopards. You can see it with snakes as well, not just mammals, where they investigate different types of strategies to get the most basic thing, food. So it can be quite entertaining to watch younger animals. As they get older, things seem a lot more purposeful. And they tend to be quite a bit more patient. Hi, Lubag. You say, won't you just look at those colors? Those colors are incredible. The blue sky is really, really picking up. Well, it's just all the landscape here is so contrasting. And the sky's blueness being picked up by the water there is just incredible. It's such a beautiful landscape, and we often associate wild spaces with this exuberant green color palette. But really all our eyes like, or what we find attractive, is vibrant color. colors. So because there's so much contrast created by this, the color of the rocks in this area, and so much light is being reflected, that it really is a joy for our eyes. We really enjoy contrast. It just makes things pop. Oh no, I hope that wildebeest is not in for more of a stressful time. This elephant is really staring it down, but you know what? And this may sound harsh, but I've met a couple wildebeests that deserve it. There was a wildebeest at Kariqa that was staring me down from the really, really creepily, hiding behind a bush, just poking its head out and staring at me periodically. And I wasn't even, it's not as if he was very close and decided to turn. No, it was as if he was trying to do to me what this elephant is doing to this wildebeest. I love when animals are like that, though, because it's really entertaining and it affords you the pleasure of kind of interpreting it in a human way, which is obviously very funny. Hi, Feral. You'd like to know if the area at the back, so where that tree line is the closest grazing area. So there's not a lot of grass. Oh, Cheryl. Sorry, Cheryl. There's not a lot of grass in that area, not as far as I can see. You can see the majority of it is kind of this very dry, thickety kind of vegetation. So there's going to be lots of browsing going on there, as opposed to grazing, but I understand what you're saying. But there are also these other little patches. You can see just in the space that we're looking at now, you can see that there's these patches. But this vegetation is going to be quite rough. Now, all these animals are well adapted to being able to consume and process this kind of roughage, because just like these animals have to seek out water, have to have very efficient bodily functions to make sure that they're not wasting a lot of water, because this is an arid area, the trees do too. So these trees are going to have really nice long roots. They're going to be able to tap into the water table, and they're going to try and conserve as much water as possible. Now, trees do that in a number of ways, but the way that's probably most obvious is the opening and closing of their stomata on their leaves. So leaves have, so obviously water is moving through the tree all the time. It's carrying oxygen and hydrogen and all these important components for them to be able to photosynthesize, for them to be able to plump up their leaves, to have all these different structures on the tree. So the water is super important. But it's also really important that the water doesn't evaporate out of the leaves. So imagine the leaves are like skin. The leaves on these trees, they're like skin. And so there's quite a bit of surface area. So you might even find in arid areas, not just in southern Africa, but arid areas anywhere in the world, trees that are in that area are going to have much smaller leaves. So it reduces the amount of surface area from which they can have their moisture taken out or evaporated from. So you're going to get small leaved trees. And on top of that, I told you that leaves are kind of like skin. So like we have pores in our skin, and those pores can release sweat, get water out of our body. The pores on leaves are called stomata, and those can open and close. So when the tree has lots of water, they might open. So, I mean, I see this a lot of times with my houseplants. If they've been overwatered, especially those that are very efficient at processing water and take up water quite readily. For example, I have a Monstera deliciosa. It's my favorite plant. My favorite house plant. But anyway, When she gets quite a bit of water, you might notice that water starts dripping from the leaf very, very slowly. And I'm sure you would have seen that with the plants at your home as well. And that's because they've decided to open up that stomata, those pores in the leaves, and let the water out because it's a bit too much. They're trying to reach an equilibrium. With the trees in this arid area, they're basically going to do the opposite. They're going to keep those stomata closed for as long as possible. And gas exchange also happens through that area. So you're going to keep it nice and tight, try to keep as much water in it as possible, but at the same time, these trees are well adapted to arid areas, so they're not going to have too much of water in them anyway. So the animals that are busy browsing on these trees have to really, really work for that extra moisture. And usually that's done by grazing or browsing in this case, very early in the morning where there's the water that's in the atmosphere settles on the leaves as dew. So that's when you get a little bit extra moisture as they browse. Water is key. Now we've got a whole lot of zebra that have come through as well. It's just very, very busy here at Okokoyo, which is lovely. I'm gonna just move us across to see if our other bull is still around and what he's doing. Let me get us a bit of a wider view as well. Nope, it wasn't very successful. Our bull seems to have moved off. Yeah, so he was walking kind of towards the right there. But he seems to have moved off. So look at how comfortable these zebras are coming down to the waterhole. And zebras can be quite skittish at a waterhole. I've seen them in like this, and then somebody steps on something completely harmless like a rock, and then suddenly everyone's bursting out of the water. But it's important that they react like that because they rather react than not react at all and suddenly realize, oh, there's a crocodile here all of a sudden. It's really important that that instinct to react to survive is at the forefront of their actions. But they've come in quite a bit now. Again, you know, the skin around the legs for most animals are, I mean, they're not really that thin. The skin is probably the same as the rest of the body, but there's a lot less muscle mass. So they can feel cool by submerging their legs quite a bit. For example, they were submerging their whole body. There's a lot of muscle and fat layers that they've got to get through to get cool immediately. It still works, it just takes a little bit more time. But with the legs, a little bit thinner, so they can get coolness in that area a little bit quicker. Can see everyone's kind of cleared out from the elephant side, but not reacting to him. They're used to him now. These zebras are using those same paths to head back towards that area at the back there. Those thickets. They won't offer the best shade, because remember they're going to be pretty much small-leaved trees, but they will offer some relief from the sun. Ooh, these blues are really, really special right now. Catherine, that is an excellent question. So Catherine's asking if these animals would have learned that there's no crocodiles in this can, to an extent, but these animals are really, they've been briefed really well today because they reacted in a way that is a really good example of what we're going to talk about. You could see that suddenly they all just kind of burst forth. First, it was the Springboks that were reacting to something within their little group. There was a bit of a fight, but they had created quite a ruckus, which caused the zebra to then react and burst out of the water. Now they've turned around and back in. So there's two ways in which, let's start here. Yes, they would have learned that there are no crocodiles in this water, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them that every time that they've come here, there are no crocodiles, because regardless, they feel more comfortable moving in this direction. They maybe feel more comfortable at the edge of this water because they know that every time they've come here, there's been no crocodile. But they will still react severely if there is a disturbance because there could always be a crocodile. They wouldn't know for sure. So there's learning, there's knowledge that they have acquired about the environment, but there's also instinct. And instinct will always override the knowledge because it's very, very basic. And the instinct will always be to react to a disturbance because it could potentially affect your survival. So, yes, they may have learned that there are no crocs here, but that doesn't really mean too much. It may, in a zebra or springbok way, may offer some kind of peace of mind, in whatever way peace of mind is to them. But they're still going to be nervous. The only time you really see them relax is when they've been at a waterhole for some time. Because then it's not just about the knowledge that, oh, I remember last time there was no crocodile here. There's new information that tells them, oh, right now, here today as I stand, I don't see any crocodile. But if there's a disturbance, they will still react. Animals can definitely learn, and we really don't give them as much credit as we should. And again, it comes down to the fact that we only know learning and intelligence within our own subjective reality. So it's a hard thing to measure. I mean, we can do testing about self-awareness and things like that with animals, memory. Those are things that we know about ourselves and our own intelligence. And so we can test that, and we know that animals show those things. And they can definitely solve puzzles and things like that. Obviously, it depends on the animal, but we've done tests where the intelligence of hyenas and leopards and lions and things like that, obviously elephants, have been tested and sometimes compared. But we only know it within the framework of what we think of as intelligence, which is subjective. It's what we know. And animal intelligence could be completely different, with obviously some similarities. And quite often, these smaller animals, they don't really get the attention when it comes to intelligence. They don't get that much testing done on them. The numerous prey species, antelope, zebra, etc. Not a whole amount of intelligence testing done on them, and I think there ought to be. Hi, Noel. Noel, you would like to know if elephants from different herds fight. I have not ever seen a herd. So remember that a herd of elephants is made up of females and their offspring. It's matriarchal. I've never seen two herds physically fight. I have seen two herds come together and there being a disagreement. Obviously, something was wrong. It was crazy. It was probably the first time I had truly felt like this situation is not in my hands. There's nothing I can do as a guide about what is going on right now, and I've just got to hope for the best. There was only one time that happened, and I'll tell you about that time in a moment. But generally speaking, herds know who their neighbors are. So a herd in, if we can use the Sabi Sand in Djuma, for example, herds in Djuma are familiar with the herds that are on Chitwa or Cheetah Plains towards the east, or even Simbambili towards the west, and even herds in the Kruger. They are familiar with who those herds are, and often they may be related to them too. So it's not, or at least I haven't seen, well, I wouldn't know actually, but herds that would travel a whole lot of distance, so a new herd meeting a new herd, one they've never seen before. Again, unlikely that they would fight. It just doesn't make sense for them. It doesn't make sense because they would just end up hurting each other. And because their home ranges are so large, it wouldn't make sense to risk injury to yourself, to your matriarch, to all the calves by engaging in a fight if there are resources around. There might not be another waterhole within 5 kilometers, but that's okay because you're a big elephant and you can roam that distance and find that resource. So usually fights happen because there's competition for resources. Resources can be in the form of mating opportunities, food, water, space. Those things are all resources. Sunlight, shade, that kind of thing. And so if you have a really big home range and you can move around a lot, and the majority of the individuals that you're coming across are individuals you know, maybe distantly related to as well, there's really no need to fight. Now, the time that I was telling you about, let's just move across to what our Illy Bull is up to. The time I was telling you about was, it might have been about 2 years ago. There, he's moving off. I was taking a guide on a training drive. So the guide I was training was in front, and I was sitting at the back with the camera. And these elephants, and this was an experienced guide. This training was to be able to be a wildlife naturalist and present and things like that. So I trusted him, and we all kind of had to trust each other. But we were watching two herds at a waterhole, and all of a sudden, so the two herds then moved towards us as they usually do because they're going to go past us and down the road. And then suddenly there was just this uproar. These two herds had moved together almost through each other because they both were leaving at the same time, though they arrived at a different time. There were little calves all over the place, and now these elephants were all around us. There must have been 50 elephants all around this vehicle, and each one of them is shouting. Some are trumpeting, so we can hear all that, but the others, there's this low rumble of communication, and it's going through you, and it doesn't feel happy. It felt angry. Now, just to tell you how it was so anxiety causing, when I mean, like, you're feeling like something's going to happen, you've got to be on edge. Because when elephants communicate at that low frequency that we've spoken about before, that low frequency does not mean Just because we can't hear it doesn't mean it's soft. We simply can't hear it. When they're communicating at that frequency, they can communicate really, really, really loudly, as if they're at a rock concert. That's what it's often been compared to. Elephants communicating at low frequencies is like being at a concert. So all that sound is hitting you, you just can't hear it. So imagine that from 50 elephants plus trumpeting, and they're all staring at us. There was nothing we could do. We couldn't move. There was nothing, we wouldn't be able to, tap the vehicle or shout for them to get distracted by us because there were just so many and they were all very, very upset. So you just had to be patient and trust that however it's going to play out is how it's going to play out. And then suddenly, this little calf from one end of this herd starts running across, gets met by another female, and they both run to the other side, to the other herd. That little calf had gotten mixed up. So one herd had thought that it had lost a calf. The other herd didn't know why this herd was shouting at them. The calf was probably confused. And as soon as that calf managed to figure out what was happening and mum or aunt came to fetch it and they moved off, everything calmed down. But it was really, really, whew, very intense.
Did you know that explorers are watching ad-free right now? Right this very minute, they are listening to the soothing sounds of nature and seeing uninterrupted content.
I am shaking with excitement.
But don't fret, you can try out an Explorer subscription in monthly, 6-monthly, and yearly options. Experience nature naturally, totally ad-free. Wild Earth Explorers, it's in your nature.
Apart from behavioral changes that we can make to them or regulate, us as humans, we will also sweat, we will Pilo-erect. I know that sounds a bit weird, but it's when you lift up the hairs on your
Ah, yes, the Okukuyu waterhole. What a wonderful waterhole that is. And I'm sure if it's very hot, there's probably lots of animals coming down to drink. And, well, as suspected here as well on the Kariega Game Reserve at Scotia Dam, there's also a lot of animals now coming down to the waterhole. And this little baby just resting up in its mother's shade near to the waterhole, hasn't quite gone down for a drink just yet, but had some ostriches come in for a drink. They were all in a line. Now it looks like they've quenched their thirst. There's some nyala making their way down for a drink as well. And off over on the other side, as I pan across, you'll just start to see the buffalo have arrived as well. So it's making for wonderful viewing here. And the otherwise quiet eastern side of the reserve. Did I say quiet? Does that look quiet to you? I don't think so. But always worth it when it's very hot, as it's getting now, after a very chilly start to the morning. Lots of animals now coming down to quench their thirst. It's thirsty work being out here in the bush when it's hot. So, and no animals enjoy the water much more than buffalo. Elephants, yeah, rhinos, warthogs, but buffalo are definitely one of those. Let's see if we can get in nice and close. Just do a couple of the individuals, just to get a nice close-up. We were with them yesterday afternoon as well when Nick was finishing up, and they were just all ruminating, lying, resting, and then we didn't have any sign of them this morning, and now with it being hot they've all come down, so that's pretty awesome. Some of them wading right into the water itself. That one going for a real swim. See what he gets up to. Looks like he's chasing a duck. He looks like I feel. I also want to go for a swim in there, but not with a whole herd of buffalo, that's for sure. It's pretty quiet. There's a bit of a breeze coming through now. You might just start to see a bit of a ripple on the water, besides the fact that the buffalo are making waves. A little bit of a breeze coming through, so it's going to cool things down a little bit and just help take the edge off the heat. Well, Riley, I'm glad it's as entertaining for you as it is for me, because yeah, watching a whole herd come down like this is always fascinating and entertaining, as you say. But all sorts going on with the ostriches, the zebra, the buffalo, the nyala. Almost don't know where to look. They'll generally all move together if some of them start to head towards Mud Wallow, which is right near to me. I think these ones that are just passing in the front of the frame here are actually doing just that. So I'll just see if they bed down in the mud, and then we'll have a good look at them as well. For now, the major part of the group is enjoying the larger water body of the Scotia Dam. There's quite a lot of youngsters in amongst the group as well, which is great to see. So this herd is growing. So some of them do prefer the mud, because I think they like that caked layer on their skin, and then keeps in the cool a bit longer, as well as help to alleviate a bit of the parasites, and they rub it off. I think it suffocates the ticks as well, so they like to do that. Wallow, I mean. I'm glad they've come back for their daily spa session. I've missed watching them. They seem to be circling the whole water body itself. So while we're watching these buffalo, and as always, I'd just like to mention that, and that you don't forget, that this is an interactive experience. So we'd love for you to jump on board with us, send us through your questions and your comments, and you can do that by either subscribing or going on the website or on the Wild Earth app. They're slowly making their way, I think, going to come to their preference, and that being the mud wallow. The little youngster in the middle there. Blessbok getting shooed. Picking up pace as they head to their favourite wallowing site. I think the youngster hasn't quite learned how awesome it is to wallow in the mud just yet, to its full potential. But this is where they seem to all want to now start coming. And I think it's going to be a mud wallow party. There's not enough space for all of them, so some of them might have to go on to the other mud wallow, which is just on the other side of the road and just behind me. which I think is where some of the rest of them will be going. Tammy, that's a very good question. Now, buffalo have an extremely organized social structure, and they actually have pathfinders. So, and it's mostly females, actually. So there's a few of the dominant females within the group that will become pathfinders, and it's normally the most experienced, and some, not always, but generally the most aged of the group. And then that one, with the wisdom of age and experience, will know where to go, different conditions at different seasons, and different times, where to get what they require or what they're looking for, whether it be food in the best grazing, whether it be to get out of adverse conditions, too hot or too cold or too windy, and we get all of those here. So on a day like this, being nice and hot, you probably have had those leaders taking them towards this waterhole and then wallow. And then the bulls, they are sort of like the bodyguards, and they're the ones that, if there's any kind of danger presented, they're the ones that form a lager for the group, and with the females and the youngsters contained on the inside. And we often see this when they're attacked by lions, and you have this formidable unit of bulls that come to the front and then form a wall and fend off the lions. And so the lions try to disperse this organized unit and break them up so that they're not in that organization that can then lead to them actually killing the lions, as opposed to the lions taking them as prey. And also generally the bigger bulls, much harder to bring down, they're much stronger, they're bigger, they've got bigger horns, etc. So more difficult for the lions, especially when they band together. And the lions need to get behind the buffalo to be able to take them down. So they don't want to be jumping onto their heads. So they need to get behind them, and usually through teamwork. But the teamwork of the buffalo often betters that of the lions. So it's good for lions if they do become specialists. They like to keep the buffalo on the run, and then they can approach them from behind and keep them scattered and unorganized. But an organized herd of buffalo is very, very dangerous to lions and to anything else out there, really. I think it's only probably elephants that will be able to push them off an area. If the rhinos wanted to come down now and wallow, I don't think that they stand much chance, especially if these guys banded up together. So now I'm just going to zoom out a little bit, because I've got pretty much the entire herd coming right up to us here. And I'll just pan across a little bit so that you can get an idea of what I'm sitting with. It's pretty awesome, I must say. And the closest ones being about 10 meters, 10-15 meters away. As you can see, lots of little youngsters as well, of different ages. Some within a couple of months, and others over 6 months, heading towards a year. Some with different sized horns, some with no horns at all. So it's nice to have a lovely range and different ages within the group as well.
It seems like everyone is joining the party.
Hyenas love bonding.
This is amazing. And now she's headed towards the elephants. Yeah, here comes the male behind us. This is the male lion coming over here. The elephants are huddled up to protect the young ones in the middle, and he's going after that girl. And they are the buffalo going after the lion and the lioness. They're still going after them. Look at that guy charging. Hey!
It seems like everyone is joining the party. I'm speechless. This is really, really amazing. Hyenas love bonding.
Hyena and hippo walking side by side. Terror etched on the expression of the little hippo. Look at this! Last mad dash! Hyena running along beside it. Baby hippo, jaws gaping. It's gonna make it. It's gonna make it. It did it. The baby hippo against all odds.
In that tree are two carcasses. There's a duiker carcass and a waterbuck. Well, it's not as graceful as... He's a bit hesitant because, well, climbing a tree is not the easiest, but he will get up there eventually. So let's see. There he goes. And look at the power in that. That is a massive 500-pound cat that has just climbed the marula tree and is up in there. How cool is this? I don't know how he's going to do it, but let's see.
This is amazing. And now she's headed towards the elephants. Yeah, here comes the male behind us. This is the male lion coming over here. The elephants are huddled up to protect the young ones in the middle, and he's going after that girl. And they are the buffalo going after the lion and the lioness. They're still going after them. Look at that guy charging. Hey!
It seems like everyone is joining the party. I'm speechless. This is really, really amazing. Hyenas love bonding.
Hyena and hippo walking side by side. Terror etched on the expression of the little hippo.
Come check, come check, come check.
Look at this! Last mad dash! Hyena running along beside it. Baby hippo, jaws gaping. It's gonna make it. It's gonna make it. It did it. The baby hippo against all odds.
In that tree are two carcasses. There's a duiker carcass and a waterbuck. Well, it's not as graceful as... He's a bit hesitant because, well, climbing a tree is not the easiest, but he will get up there eventually. So let's see. There he goes. And look at the power in that. That is a massive 500-pound cat that has just climbed the marula tree and is up in there. How cool is this? I don't know how he's going to do it, but let's see.
And yes, we are still here with these beautiful 3 male cheetahs, the amigos, and they haven't really moved that much, but it is getting very warm today. I think this has been one of the warmer days we've had in probably about a week. Now, one of the cheetahs did get up and sort of walk towards us and just lay just down in that shade there. So we do need to apologize to you. So we've had a few problems with the feeds apparently. So we'd just like to apologize to you all. Sorry about that. But we are back. We are here with the 3 amigos, and you can enjoy. Now, just to give you a bit of information, we always try and maintain 15 meters with these three amigos. I think it's better for them that they don't feel that we are pressuring them or we parked on top of them or anything like that. So out here, we definitely try and keep a nice little distance from them. See the distance that we've kept? And because of it, they're just continuing to sleep. But by looking at these cheetah right now, they are extremely, extremely exhausted. And fair enough, because they have had a brilliant meal and that is going to sustain them for a good few days. But the reason why I'm saying they're extremely exhausted is because all of them have got their heads down. It's the first time I've seen them with all three heads down on the ground. Whereas before, I'm sure you've noticed that usually one or two or all three of them have got their heads up. Just beautiful. And of course, you know, the way we are parked, the sun is blaring on us, and I can actually feel the trickles of sweat starting to form. But it's welcomed. Over the last few days, myself and Paul, we've been battling with feeling a little bit chilly. Not today. You might be able to swim in your Speedo this afternoon, yeah? Jake, how are you doing? Thank you for sending us a question there, Jake. Jake, we've been following them since the day they arrived here at Amakhala. Of course, you know, Ralph comes here from time to time, and then I've come and done a good few stints out here. So we follow them when we're here. But as the Wild Earth team has been here in Amakhala, and these cheetahs have been on the game reserve, we've been following them pretty much daily, with the exceptions of some of the days where we say, nah, let's just give them some space, let them be, and of course show you some other things that Amakhala has to offer. But it's a wonderful story, these cheetahs, how far they have come. And if we think about their start in life, they had quite a tough start because they did lose their mother, which is it's quite traumatic for any young animals that are still growing up with the mom. But what I like to often say is that they've allowed that situation to make them stronger. And as they stand right now, these cheetahs are incredible. The things that we've recorded them doing is things that you don't often see them doing every day, like, you know, hunting kudu, hunting eland, and covering large amounts of distances as well. Nina, the nearest waterhole from here is actually, so you are looking in a north direction currently, towards the cheetah, that is north. So of course south is going to be behind us. So just southwest of us, about, I would say, not that far, maybe 400 meters, is a waterhole called Jojo's Waterhole. And there's plenty of water in there. And so they'll definitely drink from there. And when it does rain, then the roads do fill up with a few puddles, and then on the side of the roads, and some of the mitre drains, which are drains which are built on the side of the roads to just help the water get off the road. Those drains fill up with water during the rains, and they'll drink from those puddles as well. But at the moment, things are drying up. We haven't had rain or a decent rain for a while now, and things have dried up. All those puddles are gone, and so the cheetahs are going to be semi-predictable in where they're going to go and drink. Also bear in mind that they have already probably drunk water, but when they are eating on a fresh kill and there's plenty of blood in that kill, they don't need water. They get hydrated plenty from the blood. But then as that blood drains away and they're consuming the meat and digesting and metabolizing, this is where the need for water comes in, and they'll go and drink water. As long as cheetahs are eating quite regularly, I mean, it's not necessarily for them to go to the water as much. And it's a good way of them also avoiding competition by not spending too much time at the watering holes. It's very seldom actually you see cheetahs laying on a dam wall or something like that, because they know that at some point maybe elephants are going to come down and drink, or maybe, you know, lions are going to watch those watering holes and things like that. They are just wonderful. It's so nice to, you know, pick up on their story, and especially when, like, say, I go and leave, I go on my little holiday and I come back. You know, there's a period of time that I haven't been seeing them, and then we do a handover with one another. So when Ralph finishes his stint and I take over, for example, we do a nice handover. What's been going on, things to watch out for, etc., and just to piece the story together. It's incredible what these cheetahs are able to do. And Amakhala, as a game reserve, is very lucky to have them. And then also, we just got to think about the genetics of the animal. They've got very strong genetics. So invariably, these animals are very precious. All animals are, but if we think about how endangered cheetahs are and how long they've been endangered for, every single cheetah in every game reserve is extremely precious. The reason why cheetah numbers have dwindled over the years, and it's been quite a struggle, and this is where I take my hats off to, you know, people who are associated with the Endangered Species Trust, and that is that they really are trying their absolute best to pick up the numbers and prevent the species from going extinct, because they've been endangered for a good number of years now. And a few reasons, there's quite a few factors that have led to this. And one of them is whenever competition is very high in an area, you're going to find that cheetahs are going to be negatively affected from that. They get killed and so on, and they can battle in areas where competition is extremely high. The next thing is, remember, they are exploring animals. They're home range. They don't return to areas to defend like lions or leopard would. And that is the meaning of a territory, or the definition of a territory is an area that is going to be defended from other animals. And so cheetahs are totally home range, and they're always exploring. They're always keen to find new areas. And as a result of that is, in some areas, you know, maybe they get out and they manage to get onto farmlands and things like that, and it can lead to their downfall. Also, another factor, but it's not nearly as great a factor, is they do get injured during hunts. And another factor that we can't hide from is natural diseases in the bushveld. I think as I look down, you know, past over my journey in my career, from the first day that I started until this very day that I'm talking to you, I think some of the best cheetah sightings I've ever had has actually been here in Amakhala Game Reserve. Once, with another guide, I saw them catch a young baby eland. I've seen them cheetah on Amakhala also go for young zebra and get it right. I've seen them catch a mouse on one occasion. VT, hello, and greetings from Amakhala Game Reserve. Warm welcome to you. VT, no, not yet. But, you know, the future, that'll be different because the whole idea with these 3 male cheetahs, and also bear in mind that they've got really great genetics, is we hope that they will breed in the future. Now, in this area of the game reserve, in the northerns, there is no female cheetah currently, but they are thinking, and this will probably happen in the future, but don't hold me on it, is that one of Phumelela's offspring, one of her daughter, she will probably be introduced into this section over here, and then these 3 male cheetahs will invariably take their turns mating with her. And that's the whole idea behind the whole Endangered Species Trust is, you know, you want to breed the animals. You want to allow them to have offspring and have cubs. And when those cubs get independent, they can be put into areas where perhaps cheetahs have been extinct for many years or their numbers are really critically low. And then also, you know, you've got to try and always keep in mind that one must really try and maintain the genetic integrity of these animals. And so just imagine, you know, Phumelela has got her offspring being 1 male and 1 female. There's always that chance that there can be first generation inbreeding, which sometimes does happen in nature from time to time. It doesn't, it's not detrimental. It does happen in nature from time to time, but you want to avoid that by all means. And so she will be separated from her brother, taken to another game reserve, or like I've mentioned, put here in the northerns, where she can interact and socialize with these 3 males. And that way you avoid the inbreeding side of things. Denny, most definitely, via smell, they will definitely be able to smell relatives, most definitely, but that doesn't necessarily stop them, because remember, their instinct is to breed. All wild animals, their instinct in nature is to survive another day, is to promote their genetics as many times as possible before the day comes along when, you know, something happens or you get old. That is their whole mission in life. And then also to conserve energy, so these 3 that I've just mentioned. But that won't stop them. Now it is interesting that if Phumelela's young one or her daughter does get put into this area and these 3 males mate with her, they would invariably, all 3 of them would mate with that female. And then you have a situation where when she gives birth to cubs, they could very well be a mixed litter, not necessarily from one single male. But there will be one dominant individual within these 3 male cheetahs, and we will start to see that dominance when they start socializing with a female cheetah, and then you start to see that dominance. And then that dominant one will really take part in the rites of breeding with the female. And but at some point, he's going to be tired, and he's going to go and sit there behind the bush, and the other male will mount her as well and utilize that window that's now been opened for him to breed, to mate with as well. Now remember, when cubs are born, they are very small. Try and think what a lion cub looks like. Tiny, tiny little animals. So you can imagine how small a cheetah cub must be. The unfortunate thing is, a lot of things do get a hold of them when they're young, like jackals and hyenas and lions and leopard and things like that. And it's very difficult for them to raise all their young to an adult time or to a mature state. We love seeing cheetah cubs because they really do look like little honey badgers with this thick white saddle on their back. And it could create a moment of confusion. So imagine a lion came along and saw 2 little cubs lying in the shade there. He might just take a quick glance at those young cubs and think to himself, oh, there's honey badger, and immediately turn away and walk away, because even lions, they prefer to leave honey badgers alone. And lions know very well that if they take on a honey badger, the chance of them getting bitten is high. And if they do get bitten, it's going to be quite bad for them, because honey badgers are incredibly formidable animals given their size. And to have cubs that look like little honey badgers, it just might create a moment of confusion. Even if it's a split second of confusion, it might just give those cubs a chance to hide in the bush or run away and get to somewhere safe. And if we look at modern warfare, we look at flashbangs and we look at things like smoke grenades, those are designed to create moments of confusion, and that gives an opportunity or a window to take the upper hand. Which in a cheetah's case would most definitely be to get out of there and try and hide. They may even try and hide in an aardvark burrow.
Wild Earth's mission is an expensive one, but we know that our live experience is important to so many people that cannot afford to pay for it. We have added a donate button to our website. By donating, you are directly helping us share our free nature experiences with the world. We want Wild Earth to reach children, budding conservationists, and the less fortunate. A little money goes a long way. You can make a difference to someone today.
So we've spoken about these cheetahs that had an eland carcass, just a few days ago, and so they are very full at the moment. But I would imagine that they would probably need to hunt again in roughly about 3 days or so. So who knows what their next menu option will be. Right, we're going to send you to Trishala in the meantime. We're going to leave these three amigos and carry on and find something else.
Oh, they looked so wonderful. Keeping a nice distance, as Andrew was explaining, so that they could be very comfortable. And those cheetah look very comfortable indeed. That's a nice thing about being able to look at these things remotely. It's like you can have quite a bit of peace of mind that animals are going to be behaving in their normal way. We've spoken about this before. It's not a negative or positive thing to be in an environment, but being in an environment does affect other parts, other individuals in the environment. Okay, now we have a Gemsbok coming down. Yay! Let's see if we can have a slightly closer look. I love that the animals move in quite a bit to this waterhole to drink. It looks like we have some kudu on the left there as well. Now, apart from being able to cool themselves down by getting into the water, it might be that towards the edge it's a little bit difficult because we know that there's a lot of rocks in this area. So it might be a little bit difficult to pop their head down and drink without getting in just a little bit. Because most of the animals that come to drink here do that. The larger animals, not so much, giraffe and elephants. That's also because they have a bit of a longer reach. So special. Okokoyo is always quite special. It's just this hub of activity. And I guess coming back to the question about whether the animals learn that there's no crocodiles in the area, I think other animals being around and comfortable definitely lend some sort of peace of mind. Being the first animal to come to the waterhole, or coming to the waterhole when no one else is around, is probably a time when it's especially nerve-wracking. Oh, the springbok has run off. You see, the springbok running off has caused the gemsbok to move out as well. I would love to know the water quality at this waterhole, because it seems to be, it looks really nice, and it's frequented by so many different animals. But that also means that there's going to be bacteria and excrement from a whole lot of animals, and probably urine from a whole lot of animals as well, that are getting into this water. But if it's a healthy little waterhole ecosystem, and there's a good balance of bacteria, then it shouldn't really matter. These things seem to sort themselves out. It's only when there's an imbalance that you might get an overgrowth of some algae, and even things like salmonella. And that's why a lot of, particularly terrapins, are known to carry bits of salmonella. But it's not really that they carry it. It's more a product of the environment. It's an indicator of the environment. If there's a lot of overgrowth of bacteria and the environment is poor, then they can carry salmonella. Hi, Lilyphant. Oh, it's like I read that wrong. Little fant, like, but first I said Lilyphant, and then it's like a little elephant, and it was something in between. Little fant, you say thanks, and that you could listen to this all day. Well, thank you, because let me tell you, my family's not that interested in listening to all of. From the time I was very young, I used to love the environment and science and just thinking about things. And I was very often left to rant on my own. So it's very helpful for my brain. It kind of feels like I get to work out my brain when I get to chat to you about the environment, biology, physics, chemistry, all of those, and the way they all come together in the wild. And of course, the fact that we get to see it together. So we were talking about the water quality here, and elephants are coming to drink here. I must say that the water's pretty good. I'm actually not sure if this is a pumped pan, but considering it's close to a lodge, it probably is. And considering that elephants move to one specific place or one specific side when they're drinking here, suggests that it is a pumped pan. It's probably where the pipe is for fresh water that they come to drink at, which is also going to affect the health of this water hole. It's going to improve the health of it because there's constant movement, and it'll probably help maintain a balance so that there isn't too much nasty bacteria living in there. Even still, wild animals are so resilient, and they've been exposed to all sorts of bacteria, different vectors, different conditions, injury. That is life. Life is not without those things. It's not something to be avoided. It's something that is just a part of life, a part of being an antelope or an elephant or a lion or a leopard. It's just part of life. So it's not as if they wouldn't be able to cope if there was a buildup of certain bacteria, but they can avoid it if they wanted to. Obviously, in an arid area where there isn't much water around, animals are going to be less choosy. But I don't know if you remember when there was a whole lot of zebra. We were actually looking quite close at it. I think it was the last time I was with you looking at Okokoyo. When they had moved, they kicked up a whole lot of water, and the zebras are all kind of drinking together. So when one gets spooked, they all get spooked. And when they did, they kicked up a lot of water, and then we could see that there was quite a bit of green algae in the water, to the point where it kind of stained the white stripes along their legs. But again, as long as this water hole has maintained and, well, basically if it has maintained a good equilibrium, one that worked for it, then that's all really that matters. And remember that algae is really important to the health of the system, and it's its own little ecosystem under the surface of this water hole. Many, many, many different arthropods are living in there. Tons and tons and tons. Imagine doing a little species count for a cup of water. Probably going to find quite a bit, especially if you have a microscope. Now, you've probably heard the word arthropod used a lot, and we do use it a lot because it's a really good word to include animals that are not just insects. So insects are arthropods, but not all arthropods are insects. So arthropods are a group of invertebrate animals, so they don't have a backbone, and they have an exoskeleton, a segmented body, and jointed appendages or legs. So insects fall into that category. Things like isopods, amphipods, those kinds of things fall into that category. I mean, crustaceans fall into that category, a whole lot. Millipedes. So when we use the word arthropod, we're talking about those smaller, segmented, exoskeletoned little animals. And that's important because insects are a very distinct group. So if you can imagine the amount of these tiny crustaceans and insects and little segmented and exoskeleton animals like the amphipods and isopods living in here, I'm sure there's a whole lot. I always find it very helpful to know the different groupings of animals, and I've always felt this way. You might have learned about it when you were in school. I know we learned it in biology, and I think it was in junior high school. It was King Philip came over for green soup. And that's kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, etc., etc. Genus and species. But knowing the finer groups is also really, really helpful in being able to group animals. I guess that's taxonomy, right? We get to group animals. We get to say, okay, these are antelope, these are even-toed ungulates, these are odd-toed ungulates. And the reason they're grouped like that is because they share characteristics. So if we know something about this antelope and we know it falls into the family Bovidae, we can make general assumptions about that family. That's why I like it, because it gives us a really good baseline knowledge to pull from. So when we learn about things that are more specific to an animal, we also have this really nice background of information. So if it's something that you're interested in, getting to know wildlife a little bit better and getting to know the biology of these animals a little bit better, starting off with some taxonomy work is a good point. Learn about the broad groups and then move inward. No Abdom stalks today. Interesting. I was thinking about them recently. They just seem to be coming up all of a sudden in places I look and things I read and people who are talking to me. Like Abdom stalks just seem to be coming up. And so, obviously, as one who lives and breathes biology and wildlife does, I dreamt about them last night. I often dream about animals. Abdom stalks were obviously at the forefront of my mind. But none around today. I could have told them how I've been dreaming about them. I think I see a Gemsbok towards the right there, walking towards the waterhole. But these springbok are still the animals that are taking the most advantage of the waterhole. It's lovely to be an animal that is so well suited to moisture loss and retaining as much moisture as possible. It's great, but your body is operating with a very small window of change. What is the word I'm looking for? Like a buffer, very small buffer zone, because your body is working at such a intense rate to make sure you don't lose moisture. So it's no surprise that even though they're well suited to arid environments and drink very little or don't have to drink very much, that when there is water around, they will drink as much as they can. I love the coloration of a springbok. The gemsbok as well. Really, really think it's a beautiful color. You've got this for the for the springbok, that is, a nice brown, golden, tawny kind of back. You've got that very obvious line of darker fur that separates the dorsal or the back, where the spinal area is, the top of their body, from the ventral or the bottom of their body. So 3 really striking colors on a springbok. That goldy, tawny color, that dark band, it's a very dark brown. It's not exactly black. Sometimes it can even be kind of reddy, but a dark band. And then the bottom that is slightly lighter, sometimes even white, or it appears to be white. And for mammals, we can only really make those colors and variations of those colors. No melanin, lots of melanin, everything in between. Excuse me. And then, of course, we produce different types of melanin. There's the pheomelanin, which creates kind of reddy orange colors. The eumelanin, which creates the blacks and browns. And there's a third type of melanin as well, but it's not used as a pigment. It's not used to produce color in our coats or skin. Instead, it's used in our neuropathways. It's neuromelanin. And that's because melanin is not just a pigment. It is a structural component of many, many things. It's a very important molecule. I mean, just the fact that it's involved in our neurofunction tells you it's a really important molecule. But it's amazing to look at the springbok and look at the gemsbok, and they look so different. But the types of melanin they have are the same. It's just expressed differently. It's grouped differently. There may be more pheomelanin in the springbok and less in the gemsbok. And when you look at a zebra, same thing. Same types of melanin, just expressed differently, arranged differently. And essentially that's all that we are, isn't it? Just collections of molecules arranged differently. Well, that's a topic I could go on about. Hi, leopard lover. You'd like to know if leopards are like hen's teeth out here. Leopard lover, leopards are like hen's teeth almost everywhere. Leopards are not a numerous animal. They're not very common. There are areas where they exist here, but they're not going to see them. I mean, you got to be very, very lucky to see them. It's the same as here in the Cape. Leopards exist here. They've existed here historically for many, 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 many years. But the likelihood of you seeing one is so slim. And that's because, well, firstly, they exist in so many places because they're so, so adaptable. They are the most adaptable cat. The amounts of different types of environments they've managed to conquer is amazing. In fact, they're only absent from true desert. true desert depends on rainfall, not on temperature. So you know, that's the only place they're absent from. Any other type of environment, habitat they can exist in. But they are so elusive that being lucky enough to see one is the real challenge. So they're like hen's teeth everywhere. Now, the problem and the beautiful gift that is Djuma Game Reserve and the Sabi Sand is that the leopard density is incredible. That type of leopard density is not seen anywhere else, really. And so we're just really, really, really lucky to be able to go to that kind of area. And obviously to be able to bring you the sights and sounds of the leopards in Djuma and the surrounding areas. But leopards are not easy to see. And I feel very, very, very spoiled because the majority of my guiding career was in the Sabi Sand in Djuma. And so when I've gone to Amakhala or to Karicha, even when I went to Swalu, my brain, I mean, it wants to see a leopard because it knows leopards. It's used to leopards. But the guides just laugh at me. Say, oh, you want to see a leopard in the Eastern Cape? Okay. And then I hear tall tales about how once a year ago they saw tracks on a walk. I think, okay. It just kind of grounds me again and helps me to appreciate the fact that we are so lucky that we get to spend so much time with leopards up in the Sabi Sand. Now, the same kind of goes for Swalu. Arid area, difficult to see leopards, but we saw a leopard twice when we were there. And we were there for only about a week, doing some tech setup and things like that. And one came to drink. Well, actually, it was the same leopard, and it was the same day that we had seen her twice. We were just sorting out tech stuff, and then we heard an alarm call, a kudu alarm calling, and then we were like, nah, we've already been told it's going to be far too lucky if we see a leopard. Lo and behold, we step outside because this kudu was persistently barking, and there along this rock face was a leopard moving along. And we followed her for a little bit. We obviously jumped into the vehicle. We had to follow. Saw her for a little bit. Then we came back, resumed our work, and then that evening, she came to the small waterhole just in front of where we were staying, and she drank. So that was very, very, very lucky. Very lucky. Just on the back of what I was talking about earlier, about how that essentially there are all these collection of molecules expressed, collection of genes and atoms and molecules expressed and moved around and put together in a different way. When I think about the experiences that I've had, and I don't mean just special experiences, just experiences of being a human. Of course, being in wildlife makes you feel a little bit closer to this, but you really can feel this idea of what more could I want? The mere fact that I exist as I do, you exist as you do, and these animals exist as they do, it blows my mind. Because it's so special that we exist at all in the forms that we do. One of my favorite scientists, physicists rather, is Brian Cox. And if there was one book I would recommend to you, and it goes a little bit beyond biology and wildlife, and it goes a little bit more into kind of philosophy and existential questions and moving a little bit extra, it would be The Human Universe by Brian Cox. What an absolute pleasure to read. It really makes you think about how special all of this is.
Thanks to our wonderful Wild Earth explorers, Wild Earth Kids is back. Your monthly subscriptions have allowed us to relaunch Wild Earth Schools on a weekly basis, every Wednesday for the first hour of the Sunset Safari.
You guys bring a smile to my face every single day.
Sign your class up for a special virtual field trip to Africa, because touching the lives of the future protectors of our Earth truly matters.
So we were chatting about the colors of the springbok. I'm just kind of, moving my brain back from space back into the smaller things. And I remember we were chatting about the color of the springbok and how that all mammals basically have the same types of pigments. Just how we use it is different, and how it's placed in our body is different. So these pigments, I mean, just remember that all a pigment is a type of molecule that reflects a certain color of light. So we use it as a pigment, and we call it a pigment, but just a molecule that reflects a certain color of light. And the pigments that mammals have, just this melanin and the varieties of melanin, they exist in tiny little pockets in our skin. And so if you had to shave a tiger or a leopard, you will see that kind of pattern. It's not going to be as striking and contrasty as it is in the fur, but you'll still see that type of pattern. That's because those melanosomes, those little bubbles, those homes of the melanin pigment, sits in the skin. And then from there, it moves out into the hairs, but not all the hair on an animal holds pigment. There's different types of fur. So for us, it's hair, yes, but for these animals, it's fur. It's thick, it's dense, it's across the whole body. And there's different types of them. You get this really nice, very close to the body, down kind of fur, and that's to help insulate the animal. And then there's a second tier, kind of, and that hair is down like towards the bottom of it where it attaches to the body, and then more spiky at the edge. And then there's the final rough, waterproof hair, aptly named guard hairs. And it's the guard hairs that hold the pigment. So guard hairs are the ones that show off the color from those pockets of melanin in the skin. I wonder what it would be like if we had other colors. But unfortunately, we're just stuck with variations of blacks and browns and grays. Hi, Ella. Ella, I don't know what my favorite color is. I have so many favorites, Ella. That's the problem, because the whole point of a favorite is to have something that's above all the rest. But I have a huge problem in the bush. I guess it's a huge life problem, actually, Ella. And that I have a very tough time picking favorites, because everything is just so beautiful once you get to know it. And especially with colors, I love all colors. Color is so special to me because color involves light, and light leads to eyes, and I love looking and learning about vision. So it's so hard to pick a favorite. I can't even pick a favorite animal, Ella. And that's why at the beginning when we started and we saw those elephants, I was saying to myself, and I said to you, ooh, I think elephants might be taking that top spot out of a favorite. Just maybe, but it's really hard. Especially since there's so many different vivid colors in the bush. I mean, you think about how these colors come to be. It just blows my mind. Again, lots and lots and lots of different molecules that reflect different types of light, different colors of light, different wavelengths. That's all it is. And it's just stunning. But you know, Ella, one color or one effect that I really like is iridescence. That's when things look nice and shiny. And shiny in the most beautiful way, almost like, exactly like a beautiful little starling. Or, if you're more familiar with, like lots and lots of glitter. Now I'm imagining a glittered up starling. Imagine the glitter is really, 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 really tiny, and then coating the starling, as opposed to some kind of glitter ball starling. Glitter for everyone. But the natural form, please. I was going to be super nerdy there, and I don't mind at all, by the way. I'm very happy with my nerdiness. I was going to say Tyndall's scattering and iridescent and microstructures for everybody, so everyone can shine. With mammals, you don't get that too much. But it still can happen. There are some animals like mandrills, for example, that show off blue. That blue is a result of structural coloration, not pigment. And reds, that's a result of thin membrane and blood being pushed in that area. Very, very peaceful moment here. I hope that you're all looking at the colors now, since we've been talking so much about it. Let's see if we can have a quick look around, but things are very quiet at the moment. I'm not sure what the personal space kind of parameters for a springbok is, but either that is the same springbok that is under that patch of shade, or that patch of shade is heavily defended against any other springboks entering that spot, and there can only be one there at a time, because I've not seen more than one standing in that patch. And I personally, I think that's a little selfish. That's a big patch of shade. Maybe that springbok is just very intimidating. Now I see that there's a bit of a breeze, which is going to be really lovely for these animals as well. Oof, that nice wind chill after coming out of the water, out of their legs being nice and wet, and then that wind chill is going to cool them down very, very nicely. Let's have a quick look on the other side. I'm not very good with these camera's controls. Sometimes I'm not sure if I need to press for longer or actually press multiple times. Sometimes it works both ways. And either way, I'm quite happy. Nice that there's a little bit of cloud cover. So I think these animals are not feeling too warm, not overheating. And that's the best time to come down and have a drink and to swim about. Anyway, it's been lovely spending time here at Okokoyo, but for now, let me send you back over to Andrew and his beautiful cheetah.
Oh, thanks, Trishala. What are we up to? We are watching a pair of crowned lapwings. And this one is now sort of moving a little bit slowly off. But it was actually interesting because there is a bit of these little dwarf shrubs that are growing here, part of the fynbos. And it's casting little bits of shade, which are perfect size for these crowned lapwings. And so this one that looks like it's tiptoeing was actually under this little dwarf shrub that we've just mentioned, which is quite an interesting one. So it just goes to show that it's a very warm day, and if the birds are seeking shade, you can only imagine how hot it must be right now. But I must say, as the days roll on and we're heading closer and closer to the brunt of winter, we are all scared here in the Eastern Cape. And the coldness out here, oh man, it gets cold in the Eastern Cape. Now you got to bear in mind that there's lots of valleys out here, And there's a mountain range not too far from our location called the Hogsback. And it's a few hundred kilometers, don't get me wrong, but when there is snowfall on those mountains, we're going to feel it out here. And then also when there's snowfall there by Table Mountain in the Cape, by Cape Town, that coldness comes down here. And those mornings are tremendously cold. Interesting little birds, these crowned lapwings. They're very courageous little birds. So if it was a jackal that had to walk along here, these birds, they get very irritated. And they sort of take flight sometimes and will try and mob any little threats that might be here. Interesting birds. Thanks, Teresa. It's a nice comment that you've just posted to us. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. And it's an absolute pleasure from our front. And we really enjoy what we do out here. And it's lovely to have all of you with us. And it's so nice that everybody's able to ask questions and send through their comments and things like that. It's a great concept, what Wild Earth does, connecting people with nature. Just brilliant. And it also connects us with you, wherever you come from. Now it's interesting, when these birds are ready to breed, they don't make a normal nest like some birds do, where they'll twine sticks together and make a little cup nest. Crowned lapwings don't do that. So what they do is they will make a form on the ground, F-O-R-M, a form. And what that is they will make a little bit of a concave on the grass or on the land. It's just a dent in the ground, and they will lay eggs in that dent and then sit on those eggs on the ground. But there's a challenge. Anything can find those eggs and trot on those eggs. And I've actually had a sighting a few years ago where a crowned lapwing was nesting and an elephant bull was walking in the same environment and was getting very close to the nest. And the crowned lapwings, they really took offense to that. And they mobbed this elephant. The elephant tried to slash back with its trunk, trying to catch the bird and slap it away, but was not winning. And by doing that, it caused the elephant to divert its path and walk away from the nest, which is very clever. And in some situations, imagine a jackal or is walking towards the nest. In some instances, these crowned lapwings can act injured. So they sort of buck their wing and they make their leg look funny to make it look like they're injured. And then that jackal might be diverted towards the crowned lapwing, and that really does take it right away from where those eggs are. But those eggs, if you want to spot those eggs, very difficult. They're speckled like little rocks. Makes it very tricky to try and spot them in the grass. Shame. As you can see, they're definitely conserving energy here. They're really keeping their movements limited by tiptoeing around here. They don't want to run around too much or fly around too much. Just rather save the energy in this heat of Amakhala today. Beautiful little birds, aren't they? Crowned lapwing. Used to be a crowned plover, but that's changed. And they call them crowned lapwings. Just brilliant. It's a lovely way to end off the Escape to Nature with these birds. And talking about ending off, we are heading towards the end of the Escape to Nature experience. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us out here. And again, we do apologize for the few technical issues that we had. And we do look forward to seeing you on the Sunset Safari, which will commence at around about 2:30 Central African time. Until then, you all have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in a bit.